The Secret Cipher of the Sky, the untold saga of the Alaskan Gold Rush and the women who built America. It was not gold that made Dawson City, Yukon famous, it was the women. They arrived not in the ragged ranks of hopeful prospectors, but in silk, lace, and an indomitable spirit that would prove more valuable than any nugget dug from the frozen earth. Forget the iconic image of the lone, grizzled miner. The true, astonishing story of the Klondike Gold Rush, the secret history that shaped modern America, begins not in the mud, but in the shimmering, silent determination of figures like Dutch Kate Rockwell, the dance hall queen who brokered peace with the Northwest Mounted Police, and Belinda Mulrooney, the laundress who became a millionaire tycoon. Their audacious, unbelievable journey from the smoky saloons of Seattle to the unimaginable cold of the Yukon is a forgotten epic, a true tale of grit, gender, and the hidden power of a few bold women who cracked the cipher of the North, and in doing so, laid the foundational stones of the modern American West. Chapter 1. The Whispers in the Rain-Slicked Streets. The year was 1897, and the rain in Seattle was a steady gray drizzle, a suitable metaphor for the city's mood. The financial panic of '93 had crippled the nation, leaving the docks a graveyard of failed ventures, and the streets crowded with men whose pockets were as empty as their prospects. Despair had a smell, a mix of stale beer, wet wool, and unwashed taupe. On a blistered wharf, watching the mail steamer Queen prepare to dock, stood a woman who seemed impervious to the rain and the gloom. Belinda Mulrooney. Belinda was 26, but her hands, red and chapped from years of labor, told a longer story. She was a master laundress, a business owner who had cornered the market on clean collars and pressed suits for Seattle's elite. Her business was, by all accounts, successful, but Belinda had an ambition that refused to be neatly folded and starched. It was a hunger for a different kind of life, one that wasn't measured in bills paid and linen whitened. The Queen was late. It was arriving from the north, from a territory so vast and unmapped that it still felt like the edge of the world, Alaska and the Canadian Yukon. Most people dismissed it as a land of ice and wolves, but Belinda, who meticulously read every newspaper column, knew better. She knew the wilderness was a canvas for reinvention. As the Queen finally nudged against the dock, a hush fell over the assembled crowd. They weren't waiting for passengers, they were waiting for cargo, a single, small article of cargo. Then it happened. A man, recognizable by his dirt-stained clothes and a beard frosted with the residual chill of the north, stumbled down the gangplank. He was clutching a heavy canvas sack. The man, a prospector named Clarence Barry, was mobbed instantly. "What'd you get, Barry? Anything good?" The questions were a desperate chorus. Barry didn't speak. He simply opened his sack on the rain-slicked planks. A collective gasp, a sound that would ripple across the continent and change the course of American history, erupted from the crowd. Pouring out of the sack, catching the gull light and making it blaze, was a cascade of pure, raw, shimmering gold. Not dust, not flakes, but heavy, ugly, beautiful nuggets. The crowd erupted. Men screamed, women fainted, and the long, dreary economic depression suddenly evaporated in a single golden flash. The newsboys, who had been lazily hawking their afternoon editions, now screamed the headline that would empty cities and fill grave sites. "Gold! Gold! Gold in the Klondike!" Belinda Mulrooney did not cheer. She did not rush forward to touch the treasure. Instead, she stood back, her piercing blue eyes calculating. She wasn't looking at the gold. She was looking at the men, the panic, the frenzy, the ill-equipped madness that had just been unleashed. "Fools," she muttered, pulling her shawl tighter. They're all looking in the wrong direction. Gold was a gamble. The real wealth, she knew, lay not in the ground, but in the services those desperate, gold-crazed men would pay for. They would need tools, shelter, clean clothes, and something far more valuable in the crushing loneliness of the wilderness: comfort and civilization. Within 48 hours, Belinda Mulrooney had liquidated her highly profitable laundry business, sold her home, and was standing on the deck of the steamship Portland, which was being hastily loaded for the North. She was taking her life savings, a formidable $5,000, and a cargo of the most unusual supplies: fine linens, bolts of silk, copper plumbing, a prefabricated stove, and a disassembled sawmill. "Where are you going, Miss Mulrooney?" the captain asked, bewildered by her strange assortment of goods. Belinda simply smiled, a rare, hard expression. "To build a hotel, Captain, a civilized one, and I shall charge accordingly." She was one of the first to leave, a pioneer driven not by the dream of panning for gold, but by the certainty of capitalizing on human need. Chapter 2: The Dance Hall Queen and the Shadow of the Law. While Belinda Mulrooney was on the frigid, open sea, another key figure in this unbelievable saga was making her move, not with business logic, but with pure, unadulterated bravado. Dutch Kate Rockwell was, at 22, already a legend in the shadowy underworld of the West Coast. A statuesque, raven-haired beauty, she was notorious for her dazzling stage presence, her razor-sharp wit, and her ability to handle any man who mistook her profession for weakness. Kate was a dance hall girl, a singer, and a woman who played the odds better than any seasoned gambler. She had run from a difficult past in New York City, reinventing herself in the boom and bust towns of the Pacific Northwest. Unlike the pragmatic Belinda, Kate was driven by a thirst for adventure, a need to escape the restrictive judgment of proper society, and an almost reckless desire for high-stakes living. The news of the Klondike Gold was to her not a business opportunity, but the stage for the greatest performance of her life. "They'll need entertainment," she declared to her partner, a slick, handsome confidence man named Alexander Pantages, who would later become a powerful but notorious theater magnate. "They'll need music, dancing, and a place to forget the cold. We're going north, Alex." Kate's supplies were different from Belinda's. She packed the most extravagant costumes she owned: sequins, plumes, satin gowns that would look absurd in the wilderness, a battered piano, and a huge supply of the one thing that could not be mined: bourbon and champagne. She also carried a secret, one that would become critical to her survival: an uncanny ability to read a room and a deep-seated respect for law and order, despite living outside its conventions. The journey to the Klondike was a 600-mile torturous gauntlet. It was a trek across the Chilkoot Pass, a sheer wall of ice and snow that separated the coastal port of Skagway, Alaska, from the Yukon Territory. Thousands of men, nicknamed the Stampeders, were already on the trail, their progress a chaotic crawl. The Canadian government, whose territory the gold lay in, had anticipated the chaos. They had posted the Northwest Mounted Police, NWMP, at the summit of the Chilkoot Gas. The NWMP were a legendary force, and their mandate was absolute. No one would enter the Yukon without a year's supply of provisions, 2,000 pounds of gear per person. This was a humanitarian measure designed to prevent mass starvation in the remote wilderness. For the Stampeders, this rule was a disaster. It meant carrying 2,000 pounds of supplies, about 30 to 40 trips up the pass, on their backs. It was a Sisyphean struggle that broke men's bodies and their spirits. The trail was littered with abandoned gear, frozen corpses, and the raw detritus of a dream turning into a nightmare. Kate and Alex arrived at the base of the pass with their outlandish gear, prepared for a fight. They reached the summit, where a towering, stern-faced NWMP corporal named Sergeant Preston stood guard. Preston, a man whose face was chiseled by the northern wind, stopped their heavily laden sled. "Your manifest, ma'am?" he commanded, his eyes sweeping over the silks and the bottles of French wine. Kate, undaunted, handed him the official-looking papers. They listed her supplies with painstaking detail: 150 pounds of flour, 100 pounds of beans, 50 pounds of salted pork. But hidden beneath the mundane list was the reality. Most of the listed food had been exchanged for liquor and stage costumes. She was hundreds of pounds short of the requirement. Sergeant Preston glanced at the manifest, then at the absurd sight of a piano strapped to a sled, and fixed his steely gaze at Kate. "You are short, miss. I will not risk starvation in my territory for your entertainment." Kate did not plead. She did something completely unexpected. She put her hands on her hips, met his gaze, and began to sing. Her voice, clear and powerful, rang out across the frozen, silent mountain, a mournful Irish ballad about a lone traveler. When the song ended, the corporal's expression had softened, marginally. Kate seized the moment, not with flirtation, but with logic. "Sergeant," she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratory whisper, "you have thousands of men down there, angry, desperate, starving men. They have gold in their eyes and madness in their hearts. When they get to Dawson, they will need a release. They will need a place to spend their gold before they turn their desperation on each other or on your men." She gestured to her crates of liquor. "I am not bringing food. I am bringing peace. I am bringing an outlet for their violence, a place where they can drink, dance, and forget their hardships under the watchful eye of a proprietor who knows how to keep order. I will keep the worst of the mob occupied and distracted. Think of me as a social lubricant for your jurisdiction, a necessary evil." The corporal was silent for a long moment, the wind whistling over the peak. No one had ever addressed the NWMP with such audacious geopolitical strategy. "You have a point, Miss Rockwell. Your supplies are dangerously insufficient, but your purpose perhaps is not. I am letting you pass. But know this, you step out of line, even once, and I will personally see you sent back to Seattle in chains." Kate offered a dazzling, genuine smile. "Understood, Sergeant. I wouldn't have it any other way." Kate, the dance hall queen, had just struck a secret, unofficial accord with the most powerful legal force in the North, ensuring that her saloon, the Monte Carlo, would become the beating, if slightly corrupt, heart of the gold rush.